It is.
Yeah, right. Whatever. So, hey, Holly, how's it
Hey,
going?
good.
So, just as like a warm up question, how many how many times have you sung the Beethoven's Ninth?
Once. This time that's on the recording.
Really? Cool,
Yes.
cool. Wow, that's awesome. Because a lot of the other MCP singers, talk about all the different times. So what was it like for you?
It was very fun. Extremely intimidating at the beginning when they're like, "We're just gonna do a dry run through," and I had no idea what I was getting into. Obviously, I know the melody from some parts of it. I'm sure I've listened to the whole thing at one point, but I hadn't focused on the choral section. So it was fun to learn it. I definitely, after that first rehearsal, thought I got to practice on my own because this is a problem.
What would you say would be well, first of all, what part do you sing?
I sing soprano one or soprano two, depending on what they need. So for
Okay,
this one, it was the soprano one, and then jump down to alto when they need it back and forth.
gotcha. What would you say was one of your favorite things about that part, and what was, one of the challenging things about singing that part?
So I guess I could speak to both parts. The alto section, and this is great. Like some really good lines that they sing. So there were some parts I thought, oh dang it, I have to go up to the soprano part for that because they have some really good sections. And I think having listened to the recording now, our section there, I do think that you can hear that come out, which is great.
Mm.
And then as a soprano one, there's a lot of really high notes that you can really enjoy. For long periods of time at extremely high volumes and speeds. So there's a lot of good stuff from both sections. It was a very um, mentally and physically stimulating piece to be a part of.
Okay. Is it true that sopranos just like to sing high notes for long periods of time?
In my case, that's true. I can't speak to everybody.
Cool, cool, cool.
I'd sing a high note constantly if I could.
Awesome. I happen to be I would call myself a soprano 2, alto 1 as well, and, yeah, it is fun to just be able to wail sometimes.
Hmm.
So so one of the things that I've heard from other from singers, who have sung this piece, especially with the Mendelssohn, is it's about sort of the theme of it or the emotional ride of it. What was that like for you, especially like in performance?
Yeah, it's great. I know I personally try to learn as much of the translation of a piece as I'm singing it so that I can actually dig deep into not just the idea of the phrase, but each word. Like those times when we say Bruder or you're saying Freude over and over again, you're not just depressed, oh, it's Freude again, but you want to bring out the joy and have fun with it. And I think, especially the way that it comes together, which I'm sure is both through Beethoven's composition and through Maestro's conducting. It just I don't know, it fills you with joy the more and more you get into it, the more you sing, and then by the end you feel like you're exploding, and the sound sounds like it's exploding too. I don't know. I think that this song is like, I guess, an onomatopoeia, like a musical onomatopoeia for joy. It just is very obvious to me as we sing it. So I don't know. It was definitely a very good one to sing, and a great example of that where it really does matter if you know what you're singing and you can kind of emphasize it too, because it makes so much more of a difference, in my opinion, at least.
Cool, cool. Could you give me a Freude? Could you just give me a
Freude, like that.
That's nice, yes. Cool, cool. Very nice. I'm having everybody give me a Freude so I can just so I can piece them together. It'll be fun. Cool. Now, you mentioned you have students, right?
Yes.
So, what do you ever share with your students about your experience singing with the Mendelssohn?
Yeah, I do. Actually, anything I do, I try to encourage my students to either, like, if they don't know what I'm doing, whether it's a musical or something with the Mendelssohn Choir, that they at least, are aware that things are happening. Number one, since it makes your teacher look like they don't just sit at home and play the piano or sing constantly. But especially this piece was super cool, and I'm still bringing it up all the time since Ode to Joy is one of those pieces that basically every piano student learns. And then any of my students who are involved in a choir always try to bring in the, you know, diction area of it with Montfort bringing in his I guess just the diction of the pronunciation, but also the idea that you want to have some very pianissimo quiets and some louds and being able to support them well. Um, yeah, this is actually a great example of with both piano and voice students being a great piece and understanding this song's about joy. You shouldn't just plunk it out and play it and say you're done, but actually try to bring that into the piece as you sing it or as you play it.
Cool. Wow, I wish I had you as a teacher when I was like.
I don't know about that.
You would have been like the coolest teacher, like, oh, I'm gonna go see Miss Holly again. Yeah, I would have actually maybe, who knows, practiced. Well, maybe not. I was never good at that.
I have some students that do, and some that we have to push a little bit.
So what were you like as a student?
So I think when I was younger, like elementary student, I was definitely the good thing my mother was pushing me to practice every day on a routine schedule. And then once I reached like junior high, I definitely became much more self-motivated to do it. And now I could say it's kind of an addiction that I just, if I'm, not doing anything else, I think I have to go practice now. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I know most people aren't like that, but
what can you say? That's why you're so wonderful now,
thanks.
the consequences being good. They say that. Okay, here's an interesting question for you. It's understood that Beethoven was actually deaf when he wrote and this piece and when it was premiered. Do you ever think about that? And does that ever make you think about the piece differently, knowing that the composer couldn't hear it physically?
Yeah. Specifically Beethoven too. I actually read a book recently. I don't remember the name of it, but it was talking about his experience, like what they thought his hearing loss would have been like, and how like the louds would have been extra loud and the softs would have been extra quiet, and that in between sometimes he would lose some of the sounds. So for me, that was actually kind of cool because you can hear in it his, change from loud to loud to soft, kind of going back and forth more than the average composer I think would do. And I think I would say that that's kind of an evidence of him saying, I can hear this, even if it's just a tiny little bit versus everything else. I just think it's phenomenal that anyone can do that. Anyone who can compose for orchestra in general, I think is amazing, because I could not imagine doing that. But being able to do that, hear all the parts in your head, put it on paper, and then being able to conduct it when you don't get that much feedback and you just keep going on, so impressive to me.
Totally. Yeah. Well, all of you who sing in the Mendelssohn are pretty impressive to me because there's so many. It's amazing how many different styles that. Because how long have you been in the Mendelssohn? Remind me.
I started in 2015, the fall.
Okay, so if you had to count them up or think about like how many different styles would you say you've had a chance to sing with this particular choir?
That's hard. I mean, off the top of my head, like the most diverse, you have like Bach, Baroque, you have some classical pieces. We had Bob Dylan, Stuart Copeland, which was, I would say, its own genre. We had the spirituals that we did. I'm trying to think off the top of my head any other ones. I mean, and even like the different composers, like doing Handel's Messiah is completely different than doing the Damnation of Faust, which I don't know. I always find joy not just in the differences of genres, I guess, but also of the composers too, and seeing the little joy that they bring in with each of them. But it's also cool to me to see how many of those composers that are even different genres, how much stuff they take from each other and kind of connect the dots with. Like Stuart Copeland was mentioning something about a year ago now when we had that concert, how he was taking, obviously he has his rock and roll background, but he had like a little bit of a jazz theme at one point, and he was saying based on certain classical music that he'd listened to, this was an idea that he had. And it's cool to see how all of them influence each other as well, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, great. Well, Holly, this is great. You've given me a ton of good stuff. So, was there anything else you wanted to share about your experience either with the Beethoven 9 or with the Mendelssohn?
I've loved every minute of it. Beethoven 9 especially, I think, would be probably one of my top 5 performances that we've done. But speaking of the like different genres, like I'd say Bob Dylan was one of my favorites. This Copeland piece was one of my favorites. Beethoven 9, and then number for a long time it was number one, but the Bach's Passion of St. John was one of my favorites for a long, long time. It still is. But I think that going to hear the music and then seeing it in person, and especially like learning the music in a choral setting or on your own, and then taking it and applying it to the orchestra, and then having everything come together at the end is such a beautiful thing that if you're not a part of a group right now, you should go and be a part of a group so you can do something similar to that. But also just going to see it is such a big thing. Like listening to Beethoven 9, the CD that's coming out today, is great. But having been there in person, I can say it's even more amazing in person. So don't just support your local artists by buying their CDs or whatever. But if once things can go back in person, go see every live show you can. And in the meantime, support people as you can, whether it's with CD or listening to their stuff on SoundCloud or YouTube or whatever.
Cool. Well, thanks, Holly. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day and listening to the recording this weekend. And
you too. I've only listened to it one time so far.
Yeah, right. Now you can listen to it as many times as you want.